Walker, and we will be launching a new era in sword and sandal cinema. And I will start with a quick legend of Hercules, which this time happens to be a book. As you may know, sword and sandal cinema has always served to inspire, motivate, and fuel my personal workouts. Nearly 2 decades ago, my wife Athena gifted me with Retro Stud, a hardcover book by David Chapman that celebrates muscle movie posters worldwide. It's a wonderful book, garishly colorful, atmospheric, and evocative, full of historical tidbits, a worthy tribute to the peplum era I love so much. Thank you once again, oh wonderful wife, for this gift. I read it again and again and enjoyed each rereading. And yes, I must admit that sometimes I just flipped through and looked at the pictures. As I absorbed the book, one of the realizations that struck me is how interchangeable the protagonists of Muscle Man films truly are. These movies were marketed under different names to different countries. For instance, Hercules could also be, or may have originally been, Machiste, Goliath, Samson, Ursus, Atlas, etc. This demystified the syncretic viewpoint of the ancients for me and rendered it intelligible. It is not too difficult to imagine that something very similar happened in antiquity. I've since given copies of this tome to other peplum enthusiasts and have even included copies as giveaway tomes for some of our optimal wellness activities. A trivia point, though the earliest film in this genre goes back to 1914, 1959, the year my wife and I were born, is considered the dawn of the peplum renaissance. Considering the pivotal role these flicks have played in my life, I am greatly honored. And now to Brian Walker. Greetings, Brian. How are you?
Good evening, Hercules. I am well tonight. How are you?
I'm doing great. I've been inspired by the work I've been doing on my Facebook Sword and Sandal Cinema pages. It's coming together. It's coming together in bits and pieces, but enough pieces are on the table right now where what I've been doing that seemed random makes a lot of sense at this point. So that's
well, you've been doing a lot of work, because whenever I log into Facebook and I'll receive notifications, you're like 75% of them. All the work that you've been doing on the groups and such. I mean, it's amazing.
And it's been a lot of fun. And I love the work that you're doing on Brian's Drive-In Theater. And I've been linking to it. And
yes.
That's on my checklist. I'm working on the shrines this weekend, for instance, or over the next few days. So that's one of the must-haves in this group, to link to not only the many faces of Hercules, but to that particular bodybuilder, actor, peplum star, and also the ones that you don't have individually covered, you covered generally. So if they're not in that list, to go to that list.
And as I've been talking for the last 3 months, I am still going through the website, updating the overall layout, the navigation, and it's not just a behind the scenes update. I've been adding new photos. I've done some new background images. I've added new written content. The site now contains far more video capability than it ever had before. And for some actors, I have film trailers, I've got television appearances, and feature films available, all without any kind of copyright, thank goodness. So we can show them. And there's a lot out there. There really is. I really enjoyed, though. I have completely finished the update to the Many Faces of Hercules section at the drive-in. So every actor page has been updated. I've updated the layout and the look of the entry page as well. And I think it's a good update. It looks much better. I've also tried to work in the ads, because the ads pay for my server space, and that's not cheap. I've tried to update those so that they're not as obtrusive. I mean, I won't name the name of the site today because everybody's got to eat, and I certainly understand that. But I went into a site that also features a lot of information about B movies, and it was so difficult to navigate because there was ads
Yeah,
everywhere. And you know, I'm old now; my eyes don't work very well, and I'm trying to decipher between what's an ad and what the actual content was. And I do get confused, you know, here and there. I'm like, what the hell
me
is
too.
this doing?
Me too.
I need things more straightforward than that. And I've tried to, you know, as I get older, I've tried to make the site a little more elder friendly as well. So I've made the text big enough so that I can read it without my glasses. You know, my site's always been really graphic driven. And this update's actually gotten me back into it. My Photoshop skills had gotten really rusty, and now I'm as good as I ever was.
Yeah, your
uh,
site looks awesome. It's still retro, but it's very crisp and clear. And yes, my eyes don't work as well as they once did, and I find it a lot easier to read as well. So you're doing a great job, and I'm glad you finished the Manifest of Hercules, because that's the one I'll be focusing on primarily until we get to other parts of the show. But that'll keep me busy for months. So I'm going to be exploring it thoroughly in the days ahead.
well, very good. And that, you know, that's not to say that I won't stop back in on some of the pages and tweak a few things, because the first design I had for this update, I have gone back in and tweaked some, and I fully anticipate getting about 99% of it done, and then deciding to go back in and change something, because it's what I do. Um, but I do think it's easier to navigate. I think it's easier to read. Um, I've tried to you increase some of the contrast. So uh, I've tried to make the backgrounds darker, those that have white text, and for the ones that have black text, I've tried to make the backgrounds lighter so that there is more contrast. And I want to keep everything, you know, compliant to, so that anybody, whether you're visually challenged or what have you, can come in and you know, take a look at the, well, I mean, visit the website, I should say, and you examine the content.
I've been finding, because I've been including a video also in some of the upgrades that I've been doing. And I'm targeting the video, though, to a very narrow range, where so will allow more flexibility in the direction of the text and the comments and so forth.
Mm.
But I'm finding that some things that you can't find. Like I found that I don't own a copy of Hercules Against Rome with Alan Steele, and I've sought on eBay and on Amazon and on a bunch of different sites. I look for like a public domain copy. There's none on YouTube. And then I do have Samson Against the Son of Hercules on DVD, but I found that there's no public domain copy that I can link so that people can watch the movie on Facebook. So I'm encountering things like that as I proceed with my revisions.
You know, I'm checking. I have our entire video DVD collection, I should say, both ones that we purchased and ones we burned ourselves, hidden on my website, so I can check it from anywhere, which is really handy if I am in a big media store or something like that. I don't have Hercules Against Rome either. I didn't realize that until just now. I had no idea.
That's amazing. And I thought I had everything, pertaining to Alan Steele and Hercules, or even some of his non-Hercules roles. So I was very surprised to find that not only did I not own it, but I couldn't even locate a copy.
Well, I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me. You know, I didn't own the I can't remember what it was now, but there was a certain Peplum film that not too long ago I thought I had a copy of, and I either had a terrible copy of it or didn't have it at all. But I can't remember. I think it was one of the Reg Park films. No, that wouldn't be right, because I've had good copies of those. Well, anyway, I found a Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray was just a revelation. Just a far superior visual product, you know, than the other one that I had, and that's always refreshing to find, you know, when something's been, restored or updated, or at least you finally got a good copy of it. Sometimes it just transforms the film so much that it doesn't
Yeah.
even seem like the same movie.
I've been looking lately at Blu-ray, but then now they have 4K. So I'm two evolutions behind. And they had D for a while, but that went away.
Save your money, kids. I'm telling you, my eyesight, from if you held a book 2 feet away from me, I can read it. My eyesight's fine, except I have old eye. I just can't see anything really up close. And I got to tell you, our TVs are they're okay. We don't have a 4K yet or anything like that, but I wouldn't be able to see it anyway. So I'm not sure how much clearer it's going to get. I mean, it might indeed be clear, immeasurably, great. But if I can't detect it, what's in it for me? You know what I mean?
One of the things I found with putting the videos up is that again, there's a lot of stuff in there I didn't even know existed that's there now. Like on YouTube, there seems to be like a phenomenal amount of Peplum movies that I've never seen, and I thought I'd seen most, if not all of them. So that's very refreshing. Like Kindar, which was difficult to get when I was looking for it. Now I found Kindar.
I don't think I ever have seen Kindar the Invulnerable.
I put it in the Sword and Sandal Cinema group like for a week, and then it's still there. I'm not deleting the movies. I'm keeping them there for people to watch whenever they want, but they're no longer the featured movie. But yeah, I was very surprised to find Kindar on YouTube, because again, that was like occasionally I'd look for it and kind of shelved it again when I wouldn't find any trace of it. And here it is on YouTube now.
Mm-hmm. That's been a huge change just in the last 25 years. I mean, from the time my website started until now, I mean, it's amazing what you can find, either for free or otherwise, that you can watch. In fact, there's so much of it that it's kind of spellbinding, and I end up watching nothing because I can't make a decision, or I'll watch something so completely offbeat that it has absolutely nothing to do with what I normally like. But you never know.
I'm finding too that what people are actually interested in is not what I anticipated. Like from the numbers of people in the various groups, like I was very surprised. Like my Sword and Sandal Cinema has like 2.9 thousand people in it, but the Arnold Schwarzenegger group, where I just focus on like a small handful of his films that are Sword and Sandal in his Zeus commercial that he did recently, that has nearly 19,000 people in it. And it's very amazing because I deal with the same thing with Sword and Sandal Cinema. The Rock one, that started so astronomically growing, that I had to deal with spam for hours a day trying to delete the spam and block people from spamming. And now it's been steadily nearly 500 for like months now. So it's amazing where people's interest goes, and I'm starting to play with new things like interactive, like putting people inside the movie in like some weird way. I've been trying several different things. I might do a role-playing game for people who are into role-playing games set in the Peplum universe. I've been playing with ideas like that just to do something different. I have a motivational group with the Peplum things because that's how I use them primarily. So I don't know where that'll go. And a lot of these ideas, like most ideas, are going to wind up on the shelf, or maybe it's not time for these yet, or maybe the time came and went. But I'm having a lot of fun doing that.
Well, but these days with the technology, it's so easy and practically costs nothing to insert something new into a product that's public domain. You just all you need is a green screen and a decent computer. It doesn't cost much at all. You can shoot all the video with your iPhone. It's. I mean that's the brilliance in technology, is that it makes things that were not long ago virtually impossible to do by yourself with no budget. and you have the tools. And now you can watch pretty much any content about anything you're interested in, on YouTube, obviously. And that's amazing too. You can learn a lot of useful things. I don't think most people use it for that necessarily. But in doing research on films, it's just essential to have, something like YouTube. Before, 30, 40 years ago, if you wanted to see a film, you had to work for it. You had to track a copy down in a sleazy video cassette store, or get lucky and just find it in TV Guide and stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning so you could watch it.
Yeah.
And then tape it. Yeah. And now you can just run a search. Oh, it's here, and it's a better copy than I've ever seen.
Yeah, I found a copy on YouTube of Brian De Palma's Dionysus in '69, which was at the time rated X. And I haven't watched the whole thing, but I'd heard about this notorious play that he did. And there was nudity in it. I had at one point until somebody swiped it during one of our moves. The book of it, they wrote like a book and had photographs, but it was something I never thought I'd see. And now I found that not only is it on YouTube, but it's on several other sites on the internet for free. And again, this is something I thought I'd never actually get a chance to watch. I watched like maybe a third of it today while I was preparing for the show.
Mm-hmm. I love Brian De Palma. I mean, he made some great films. He was briefly married to one of my favorite actresses. So I Nancy Allen. She was great in movies like Blowout, which I actually saw in the theater. I don't think many people did. But it was a great movie. She's in Dress to Kill with Angie Dickinson and Michael Caine. She was in some great movies, and he made some really good ones too. Of course, she was in his movies, but so a lot of it's one and the same, since they were married. But I love Brian De Palma, but I have never seen that the late '60s Dionysus.
Yeah, I thought I'd never see it. It was something that, again, I knew it existed because pictures existed and people had talked about it, and there was the book, but I never thought I'd see it. Now I could see it, and they cleaned up the image. The last time I tried to watch it, it was so bright that I couldn't make anything out. It just looked like shapes moving hither and yon. But the copy I found today was, they cleaned it up and it was actually viewable. It was a very chaotic production, 2 screens at once. So you're watching the production from 2 different perspectives. So that's kind of confusing. I guess if I enjoy it, I'll have to watch it like 2 or 3 times just to see what was going on during the movie.
Well, there's an early '70s horror film with Ed Burns and Diane McBain called Wicked Wicked, and it is shot in a dual screen mode. So you get to see like 2 different events going on at the same time, or 2 different views of the same shot, depending on what the director was interested in. And it's really challenging because I watch a lot of movies like with one eye, essentially I'm doing something else.
Right, me too.
And it required me to just like sit there, and focus on it. And I loved it in the end, but I was initially early on really frustrated by it. I can't process all this. but then when I got used to it, it almost seemed normal by the end.
Yeah, it does, and I forgot what the film is called, but I recently found some, because I'm also into altered states of consciousness, not artificially induced. I meditate and do all sorts of things.
Well, I'd rather have them artificially induced.
There were a few movies that I had heard of, and I finally found actually one copy in my library for 25 cents in their book and DVD sale.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I'm looking forward to watching those. And when I quickly put it in just to get a sense, it was one of these things that I actually have to watch. I can't put it and do like other things and
Yeah.
occasionally watch and rewind if I think I missed something. I
Yeah.
finally found the first Hercules movie too. In 1914 or 1910. It's a really old thing. And it turned out to have been a cartoon, which I did not know. I found that through the library system as a borrow, as part of a collection.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to locate the collection. The collection is more money that I would pay, to have a short Hercules cartoon, even though it's the first Hercules cinematic thing. But I've been looking for it because occasionally somebody will post it at a very low price, and you could, get it inexpensively. Sometimes that takes years, but that's on my list of things to occasionally check for to see if I can find a cheap copy, or maybe somebody wants to break up the collection to send and is selling the discs individually. So
Mm.
I have all the detail, which disc it is, and so forth.
Or wait until somebody uploads it to YouTube and just mark it as one of your favorites.
Yes,
That's
that hasn't
I
happened yet.
I've over the years I've kind of lost a lot of my I must collect the set mentality that a lot of advertisers used to try to drive us children to in the 60s and
Yes.
70s. I never did have it in spades, but I live with somebody who still believes that, I've got to have one of every color. Well, that's true. But I'm not really like that so much. And if I have access to it, I'm okay. But with Greg, I mean, he's just like, well, I must possess it.
I can understand both. As I get older, I'm leaning more towards the way that you're going. Because I think we've discussed this before, but I realize that there are not enough years ahead of me for me to even reread or rewatch most of the things I own. So the question is, what do I really want to keep? And we've been selling a lot of our things on eBay lately.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not sure, I
I've
don't have
noticed.
to sell it. So I just put it aside. And the flood woke me up to the fact that things are indeed perishable, because the flood wiped out a lot of my belongings and a lot of my collections. So I figured with a peplum, I'm letting even the historical ones that I like slowly starting to let them go, because I love the mythical epics most of all. Even the imaginal mythical epics. So I'm focusing more on keeping those, and then the rest. I found I've been giving my cousin Ron Carson like a bunch of peplums whenever he comes over, and I really enjoy those. I've been watching those since I was a kid, and I guess till I can no longer watch anything or hear anything, I'll be watching and listening to them, and they've been my companions throughout my life, and I have no complaint against them. So they stay.
Well, for right now, I'm kind of hell bent on keeping my toys. I haven't the things that I want to shed are nothing that I have that much interest in. It might be just something as simple as living room furniture or something like that. That stuff can go, but you're going to have to pry some of my collection out of my cold dead hands. I mean, over the years, I've collected some great movie memorabilia, and every once in a while, I'll walk around and I'll think, God, what am I going to do with this? And 5 minutes later, I'm like, thank God I've got this. Or I'll think about the experience of finding it, or where I was, when I purchased, or who was with me, perhaps. And then I just think, well, that made me feel good. So yeah, I'm keeping it. That's this
We
is
have
worthwhile after all. But I do have way too much of this stuff, and I just keep collecting it. As I was telling you right before tonight's podcast, I had gone to my favorite memorabilia store, which is located in downtown Pittsburgh, Ides Entertainment. They were having their 50th anniversary sale last month for a couple of weeks. They had some amazing prices on their movie memorabilia. They had some terrific old albums. They have a great record section, comic books, action figures. I mean, you name it, they've got
action
everything.
figures too. Oh wow!
on several different floors.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it is, and it's just an amazing store. I've never walked out of there empty-handed. In fact, you weighed down a few times. On my last visit during their anniversary sale, I found some great press books. I found one for Gordon Scott's Goliath of the Vampires, right here. It's in great shape. It has no cuts. Everything is original, and I was just thrilled to get it. It displays very well. These things are pretty easy to frame too. A lot of, not all press books, but a lot of press books, especially in the 50s and 60s, were 11 by 17. And I got the press book for one of your favorites, Hercules.
Yes.
Also in very good shape. So maybe I'm full of shit. Maybe I do collect stuff just as much as anybody else. Now that I've started to think about it, oh gosh, there was no way I was walking out of that store without those two. But I walked out with actually a lot more than just that. But that's what I'm going to show tonight.
Yeah, we have more things than we know what to do with too, and sorting through them to see what to keep and what to sell. We're realizing more and more that we really don't need all this stuff. But I learned a long time ago not to get rid of things that I'll regret getting rid of, because then when circumstances change or your thought about these possessions changes, then you have to hunt them down all over again. It takes a while, and it's usually more expensive to track them down later on. So now if we're not sure, we just put it aside and we don't have to decide on the spot. There's enough things to get rid of. One of the times that we had the best of both worlds was we owned a store called the Barbarian Bazaar in Pennsylvania. And then it became the Mount Olympus Marketplace when we moved to to New Jersey. And there we had all sorts of books. We had magazines, we had comics, we had collectibles, we had computer games, video games, games, role-playing games, you name it, we had it in there. And that was the best thing, because you got to buy for the store, and and you got to buy for yourself as well. But you can keep everything in the store, and it was still yours till somebody bought it. And if you really wanted to keep something, you put it aside. But this way you had all these things and they were accessible, because stores don't sell out very quickly. And then occasionally when somebody bought something, you'd have to part with something. And sometimes you'd find many copies of it. And so that was the best. Unfortunately, when we had these stores, the situation of the country was not good fiscally for a variety of reasons. And I remember in Pennsylvania, like for instance, I was teaching in a college in Pennsylvania, and the state was the only funnel for money there for a lot of human service and educational programs. So the state froze all funds for like 6 or 7 months. So all of a sudden there were no opportunities, and the people you're competing with were your peers. So the store was originally like a side business. And we found that by itself, even though it was really cool, and we enjoyed having it and keeping it, it really, wasn't worth the time and energy we were putting into it. We were making money, but barely enough to pay the rent, to pay all the expenses for it, and so it really wasn't worth it, other than something that was cool that we wanted to do, that we enjoyed doing.
And we've actually talked about doing something similar. I mean, maybe starting a collectibles business or an antique business, where we just ferret things out and then move them on to the next owner. But I have a feeling that we would probably just accumulate more stuff. And I mean, that's great. If it's something you enjoy, go for it. And if it's something that brings you happiness, who cares about it, what anybody else thinks? But at some point though, it's like, oh gosh, this stuff's getting to be a burden. I mean, I love it, but do we have room for anything else? And I don't think that would be a good idea. We should, if we do go into a business like that, it should probably be something we don't really have much personal interest in.
Right.
You bone up on it. Learn about it. Whatever it is, so you can talk intelligently and price accordingly. But not to have something, you know, vested in, like movie memorabilia. I wouldn't sell any of it. I wouldn't make a dime. I would go out of business in record time.
I used to collect supportive things like novelizations and comic book adaptations of things that I liked. So I kept the movies, but I really, really, really doubted after much contemplation and meditation that I would ever reread the novelizations or the comic book adaptations. So those are among the first things to go, and that produced a stack of things. And a lot of comic book characters too that I lost interest in over the years. I used to collect every barbarian comic, regardless, you know, every single one. Now, occasionally Conan has my interest, but I've lost interest in most other barbarians. So that stuff is starting to go. Red Sonja, I lost interest after Marvel lost her, and she had many adventures in other comic book companies. And although she's still very popular, I'm just not interested in stories. I used to, like, once or twice a year, buy an issue, see if I can get into it. I've never been able to get into it again. So I have crates of Red Sonja that can find new homes, and that'd be okay.
Well, you know, sometimes when you've had your fill, I mean, that's that. You know, that's happened to me, you know, a number of times, you know, through the years. It's happened to me with music, you know, I mean, I won't name names, but there've been some artists that, you know, I loved 30 years ago that I've heard their stuff. I don't know that I need to hear it again. You know, sometimes when you're done with something, you're just done.
You're done with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I mean, your priorities realign like every 10 years, yeah, especially as you really begin to mature. And you know, what was important to you when you were 30 years old is probably not much of that's going to be important to you.
Right.
Yeah. It's just the difference in priorities. I still enjoy some of the same things that I enjoyed when I was 30. Yeah, you know, I mean, that's not to say that, you know, you're old and feeble and you don't love anything. That's not true. But some things do kind of fall by the wayside.
Yeah, well, with me, with the Peplums, it's the historicals, even though some of them are classics, and, you know, I'll keep those to last. But a lot of the historical stuff, you know, it just, I've tried watching it and I just can't get into it. I find that instead of like occasionally looking at the screen, I won't look at the screen at all. And if you ask me what happened, I can't tell you. Usually I know I could piece together enough of what's going on between what I hear and what I occasionally see. I just haven't been interested. So they're enjoyable, and to people who enjoy them, they would be a great treasure. But again, at this point, it doesn't seem likely that I'm going to be revisiting them.
Well, you know, and a friend of mine who since passed away kind of turned me on to this idea. Did you ever consider that maybe your role in all this is just to curate, you know, for a future generation? I mean, it's entirely you know, if you do go to all the trouble to assemble a collection that has some cohesion, you know, that has, you know, some documented history, something that's no longer around anymore. It is sort of up to us to, you know, keep the fire going, you know, pass the baton to somebody else when we're, you know, dead and buried. Maybe that's our role in all this.
I believe you may be right. That is very insightful and very wise, and I will meditate on it tonight. We might just be the caretakers.
It's what I tell myself when I get back into my website and work on it for eight or 9 hours at a stretch. I'm doing this for humanity. Yeah.
Well, you are, and people in the past have done that, and we've honored them certainly in our journeys through the sword and sandal and other retro genres. You honor the people who came before, and you cherish the books or whatever they put together to preserve it. And you're very right. In a sense, you certainly have been doing the same for decades. And I've started doing it as well. And it's a genuine love for this, you know, to keep focusing on it and feeding it. And opening it up to other people to, to share it. So it might be for other people.
As I've been working on my website, I've also been checking up on links, especially links to other websites. And there for a while, there were, and I want to say this was like 15 or 20 years ago, there were a number of websites on a lot of cult movies, fringe films, especially when it comes to, peplum, horror, science fiction, things where you do find, cult movies. There is no cult for rom-coms, for example, at least not yet, that I know of. I mean, it could happen, who knows? But I was just shocked to see how many of those websites they just aren't there anymore. So I wanted to pat myself on the back. I thought, yay, I've kept this going somehow. I'm not sure anybody else cares, but I was like, wow, I'm still.
I'm glad you're still around.
But I just thought, well, I'm still here, damn it. Made me feel pretty good. And some of the other, I was working on the horror section earlier today while I was eating my lunch, and it's not cut over yet, so don't get too excited. I've run into a couple of problems that I haven't fixed yet. But I was going through the links, and although almost every page there was still on the web, some of them hadn't. There was one that hadn't been updated since 2010.
Wow.
Mine was the only one that was still, being updated regularly. I've stumbled into a number of websites like that. I don't want to call them zombie websites because I found some great information on some of those.
I used to call them ruins of websites.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, that makes sense. I call them zombie websites, but because they don't really have an intellect anymore. But they're still around. They're not eating brains, but who knows? Maybe they are. But I was I was dismayed by it. I thought, gosh, I wish somebody would jump back in, whoever owns it, and give it an update, get back into it, have fun with it. And it's easy to slack off of something, God knows. But it's also fun to keep it going, keep it alive, and maybe I am curating old drive-in movies for somebody in the future. Who knows?
You might very that's why I'm not obsessed with like competition. Like I see it on Facebook. Like some people are very competitive with their website, whatever happens to be in a particular genre or in a particular category. And they don't really link to other websites. I've always felt the more the merrier. It's a community. And I look at things in a particular way, so everything I do reflects how my brain happens to organize this stuff and prioritize the content. But it's fun looking at how other people organize this stuff and what their take is on the content. So the more perspectives that we have, the richer the community gets.
I wholeheartedly agree. And these days you find much more of that in social media. But you've got to have a website to refer back to. Come on, guys. Like I said, get back in and update those sites. Do something with them. Write a new article. I just hate to see some of those websites are brilliant too. I don't want to name one because I don't want to call somebody out. Hey, you've been sleeping on the job since 2008. But I was kind of saddened to see it. And you're right, it is sort of like ruins or a zombie, for that matter. I mean, it's still there, but it's not moving forward. It's not really doing anything. It's a shame.
Or orphan websites. That's another way of looking at it.
Well, yeah, that's probably the best way to put it, quite honestly. And as I've been going through my website, and the Many Faces of Hercules has been entirely cut over to the new design. I've tried to add a lot of new content to each and every Hercules page. There's a lot more video content available. I've got more films available, more trailers, and in some cases, some television appearances and some very rare footage of some of these actors and actresses. And it's really renewed my interest in all of it. I got to tell you. Initially, I thought, well, I'm just going to write new cascading style sheets and do some new graphics, and that's it. And then when I started really getting into the meat of it, I thought, gosh, this sentence construct is awkward, or that information doesn't sound quite right. Maybe I need to do some more research here, or that graphic really isn't very good, or that lobby card image isn't so great. Maybe I should try to fix it. And it is sort of you just go down a rabbit hole with some of them after a while. On the other hand, I really think that the pages deserve a second look from anybody who hasn't seen it for a while, because I have added a lot of new content.
Yes, I try to link to it whenever I can, and when I change things, which is fairly often, I link to the equivalent on your site. And Nick and Michelle have some interesting content. They focus more on the latter things, whereas we seem to focus more on the earlier things. So I like throwing their stuff in every now and then as well. And then there's some people that seem to belong to all the groups, and even though they have their own, they share on all the groups. So occasionally I'll put links directly to what they're doing, and because it's awesome. There's a lot of really great content out there, like Peplum Paradise. Until we started the Sword and Sandal Cinema on Facebook, that was the place for us to hang out all the time. Now I'm too busy trying to keep Sword and Sandal Cinema together. But that's an awesome thing. They do things totally differently there. And occasionally I visit, and they have a lot of great content.
Yeah, and you're right. I just I love to see that kind of involvement, and it's the only way to bring anybody new into it. And you know what? If you do have somebody who's like a big fan of latter day Peplum, oftentimes they will think, oh gosh, what were some older representations of this content? Who were some of the actors back in the day? And it will lead them back into history. And now that content's so easy to find and easy to watch, I mean, it's great. You can see where the origin of all of this comes from.
And that is an awesome adventure. I love looking at the old special effects. Now that we can do green screens and special effects on our own inexpensively, I love watching how they creatively solved some of these problems.
And I got to tell you, on film, some of that old stuff looks no worse than what I see now. I mean, some CGI looks pretty good, but even with my eyes, I'll watch something contemporary that's got some special effects, and I'm like, that didn't look very good. How much did you pay for this? Ray Harryhausen could have done this equally as well with some clay and the camera. Special effects, I think you can see some great stuff that was done 60 or 70 years ago that just looks fabulous on screen. And you can find new stuff now that just looks like junk that somebody did in their basement.
I like in Hercules with Steve Reeves, how they fought a dinosaur.
Well, now that they could have spent a few more dollars at the costume store. I think they needed to take that back to Spirit. Because that didn't look very good. But if you have a prop like that, I mean, if you watch enough Roger Corman movies, if you have a prop like that doesn't look very good, if you shoot it at an angle or only show like part of it, you can make it a little more terrifying if you know what you're doing. If you're careful with where the camera lens ends up.
And people's reactions, people react to it as if it's horrifying, your actors.
Yeah. And like I said, you can take just a tiny part of its face or something like that, or perhaps zero in on a claw or a foot or something. You can make something more terrifying, but if the director isn't watching what he or she should be doing, and then you cut away and whoo, need a little more paper mache.
Like the many loves of Hercules with the Hydra, or Hercules versus the Hydra, as it's sometimes called. That Hydra is so slow moving.
That's true. Well, one thing that I found when we still had our Halloween parties, and who knows, I might get to resurrect one of those again here pretty soon, is that whenever we would do our haunted house, dry ice worked wonders.
Yes.
So if you can make something hard to see, even better. Yeah, fog can work wonders, though. It really can. It can make something that looks stupid look scary.
One gig that I had was as a stage magician, not a big stage, but like little local venues. I'd always wanted to do that. So I got the opportunity. So I learned some magic tricks, and dry ice was among the things I liked the most too. You could do all sorts of really weird things with dry ice that seemed magical when the dry ice was doing the work.
Well, but it does seem magical. It looks great. It doesn't matter, how rinky dink it is behind the scenes. All that matters is what ends up on screen. And if it looks good on screen, then it doesn't matter that it didn't cost anything or was kind of easy to pull off. And it does add a lot of atmosphere too. I don't think you get a lot of that these days, but if you watch 50s and 60s horror films or anything that involved some horror elements, you do see a lot of fog and dry ice and things, but it adds atmosphere. I think it looks fantastic.
Yeah, me too. I'd have to agree. I remember, like, again, some effects, like a Dracula movie where there are armadillos, one of the early Dracula movies, instead of rats.
Well, that's in Universal's 1931 version of Dracula. You do get the armadillos.
And it's hard to imagine armadillos in Transylvania, but hey, why not?
It must be southern Transylvania. the Texas part of Transylvania, perhaps.
There's a famous story, and I'll share it with you. A psychic investigator, when they were investigating mediums during the early days of that type of phenomenon, they went to a medium, and the medium was supposed to be an old wise Egyptian, but he was talking with a southern accent. So the investigator asked the spirit or the medium, if you're Egyptian, why are you speaking with a southern accent? So the spirit told them, or the medium told them, depending how you want to look at it, that they're from southern Egypt. So you never know. Southern Transylvania might very well have armadillos that we don't know about.
Could. It could. And all that sun too. I mean, that must be horrible for Dracula. Anyway, getting back into the website, this update, although it's been arduous, has really gotten me back into it. And after I do get every page updated, and we're still a ways away from finishing, I would like to go back in and make another pass, and just to make sure that I've crossed every T and dotted every I. And I would like to go back in and do some more graphics work on some of the pages. Some of the, especially with the many faces of Hercules, most of those pages are some of the earliest ones that I did for the website. And as such, we're in like the greatest need, of an update. And there are still, some images on the site that really don't look very good. Nearly every image on Brian's Drive-In Theater is clickable. You see a thumbnail when you access the site. Click on the thumbnail, and it takes you to a bigger image. Mm-hmm. And I try to make storage space for me isn't a big problem. even though I do have a lot of images. I don't store any video on my website, so it's not a, I'm not using like tons and tons of storage space. So I can afford to put better images on, but that's only if I have access to it.
Right.
I've archived. One of the few wise things that I've done is that I archived all of my website content onto essentially one thumb drive, and I can access any of it now. And I've been going back in and finding, oh gosh, this was a bigger picture than I thought I had. So maybe I can, tweak this, redo it, and remount it. And I would like to get back to some more of that. I'd like to make every image as sharp and crisp as possible.
It's looking great. I was there earlier today too. I put up some links in the Sword and Sandal Cinema group, and so I revisited and looked around a little bit today. It's looking fantastic. I'm glad that part of it's finished for now, and I'm looking forward to linking to it extensively in the days ahead. I've now broken Sword and Sandal Cinema into a couple of like categories. Mm-hmm. So I put, because I was jamming up their search engines. You couldn't get because there's only a limited amount of things they show you in the windows. So I couldn't access. So I had to rename some of it. So I have Sword and Sandal Cinema, and that's the most popular sites. The 5 most popular sites. So that's like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Steve Reeves and Sergio Gianni, aka Alan Steele, and The Rock, and there's somebody else. But anyway,
I gotta say, you have done more for the memory of Alan Steele than anybody I could name, and I think that's great. I think he was sort of an unsung, unchampioned actor.
Yeah, he was. And there's nothing on him anywhere. There's hardly anything. I found somebody did his horoscopes, so I put that up. But
really, okay, yeah. Well, that's interesting. But he's really an interesting figure because there's precious little information about that man out there that's available. It's just like he landed from Mars, did his job, and then left. But he came up through the ranks. He did stunts. He was a double. He would appear in the background in a lot of those films, and then they moved him into a second banana role, and then finally, he got into starring roles. I mean, he really worked his way up.
Yes.
It's a shame that there isn't any more information about it, and he's great in his roles. So I'm glad that you're trying to preserve his memory and keep it alive.
Yeah, he meant a lot to me. Some of the other ones that meant a lot to me, there's so much information on them that
that's true. I mean, like for Steve Reeves, I mean, practically every moment of his life was documented, which is fantastic, and that says a lot, especially his early life, not so much later when he kind of retired and did his own thing, but certainly when he started competing, and when he became famous. I mean, there's just so much documentation for him, and for some of these other people, there's just practically nothing, just precious little.
I'm finding that because I have the shrines, which are those who have passed on. And Mark Forrest recently moved to shrine status. And then I have the tributes for the ones that are still around. So I'm using the Sons of Hercules. I'm going through that rotation to build up the number of shrines and tributes. I was surprised to find some of the Sons of Hercules were still with us.
Well, that's true. Kirk Morris is still with us. I'm just going to visit my website and take a look. Of the ones on my site, oh gosh, we lost Dave Draper just a few months ago too.
Yes.
Ed Fury is still with us. Peter Lupus. Let's see, Samson Burke. He's about 93 years old.
I tried to reach out to him. I kept running into dead ends. I found emails, websites. His website is one of those phantom ones that hasn't been touched in a while.
I think it's like 2008 or 2009.
Yeah,
and I don't. I don't think, to my knowledge, now I could be wrong about this, so don't flame me, but to my knowledge, I don't think he was ever married. I don't think he has any children, so that there's nobody, able to do this for him, essentially. So you don't know what's happened there. Lou Ferrigno is still with us. We
Yes.
lost Reg Lewis last year from Fire Monsters. Arnold, Richard Harrison,
Mhm.
who's great. I mean, he God, how many movies did that man make? In the 60s and 70s and 80s. I mean, he's in just tons of movies, and he did practically every genre. There's nothing that he didn't do. He started out, with he was married to one of Jack Nicholson, or Jim Nicholson, I should say, the producer, who was part owner of American International Pictures. Richard Harrison's first wife was Jim Nicholson's daughter. So he was in some early, late 50s, early 60s AIP stuff. Went to Europe. He's Medusa versus the Son of Hercules. He's in that. So that's one of my favorite peplums too.
Mine too. Yeah.
Talk about creepy and not having a whole lot of money. That's a creepy movie. It really is, and they use a lot of dry ice, but it does give it it really works because it lends all of that atmosphere to it. And
Yes,
if you encountered something like that, it probably would look, kind of apocalyptic, and lots of smoke, lots of fog.
and I love the Sons of Hercules too, because they hopped around in time. So you have like a Son of Hercules in the Stone Age. You have Perseus in the Medusa versus the Son of Hercules, and Perseus was Hercules' grandfather. So, and in one Ulysses versus the Son of Hercules, his son is named Hercules and is actually Hercules in the original movie. So you have Hercules, the son of Hercules. So again, it didn't really make a lot of sense, but they were all united in spirit and through the theme song. So.
Well, one of the pages that I really need to update on the Many Faces of Hercules page is Gordon Mitchell. I still have all of the stuff that Gordon sent me 20 some years ago.
Wow.
But back then, I had a 20-some-year-old scanner. But late 90s and stuff like that, you can scan it at a really high DPI. And I didn't do that at the time because I could only scan in so much, so big. And I'd like to go back through some of the information that he sent me and I kept all of it, thank goodness. And maybe see if I can come up with some better images for the Gordon Mitchell page. There's a lot of stuff out there on Gordon Mitchell because he was in like 200 films.
Yes.
And he wasn't shy. I mean, he would work in any genre. He'd be the star. He might be in it for 5 minutes. It didn't seem to bother him. He just really seemed to like making pictures, and it makes him a really interesting, figure. It's a shame he's been gone now for almost 20 years. But made some great movies. I love his peplums. He's not afraid to be an antagonist. He doesn't have to be the star. He just wants to be in it, and I think that's fantastic. Some people, like Steve Reeves. I mean, he just looks like a leading man. You know what I mean? He's never going to be, you can have a supporting role. I mean, he's going to be the star, and should be. But with Gordon Mitchell, like I said, he'd do anything. He would be, kind of a hunchback henchman, or the bad guy in the spaghetti western. He would do anything, and that's fantastic.
Yes, it is fantastic. And one of the things I find sad is I mentioned it a little earlier, but some of these older stars, the pages that I've created for them haven't gotten visitors in like a very long period of time. So that I find that very sad because they contributed so much. I feel that they deserve at least to be like looked at occasionally. Just
Well, no, I agree. And if it's somebody who has since passed on, but had something to offer, had something to add, it's a shame to let them be forgotten. I mean, somebody's got to carry the torch, for them. And sometimes even today, I mean, as many films as I've seen over the years, I haven't seen as many as I want. And I will still run across something that gosh, I can't believe I didn't see that. And it'll turn me on to a completely new genre. I mean, it's happened before. Years ago I got into Italian horror films because honestly, I think Italian horror films are among the best. I mean, if you're going to pick a certain country or continent, well, in this case, country, and watch one of your favorite film genres, but from something made from that country. I think Italian films are all genres are just amazing, and I think some of the best horror films are actually French.
Some of them, I was surprised when I found Paul Naschy's original work because I grew up with his werewolf movies. And I'd never seen the originals because it was on like Channel 9 and local television late at night. So I was very surprised when I saw the originals, and they were much better than the chopped up versions that we had.
That's true. And he's somebody else whose work. You're right. His work does look better if you can. And it is more engaging if you can see a good, clean copy of it. For whatever reason, so many of the copies of his films that we had access to in America looked terrible. I mean, they were just like old drive-in prints that had been beaten to death, and then transferred to videotape. And he represents. I mean, he's sort of Spain's in
yes.
Boris Karloff to an extent, or Lon Chaney, or what have you. And just made dozens and scores of horror films, and some of them are really, really good. Some of them are very engaging. Some of them are kind of drive-in fare, but they're still fun. They're all fun to watch. Maybe not so scary, but fun.
But still, lots of fun. And over here, they cut out a lot of. Europe was always more liberal in nudity, and Paul Naschy movies were full of nudity. When I saw the originals, I was surprised at how much nudity, and I understood why we got the cut up versions on TV. But it added to the story. It wasn't gratuitous. Like no point. Like I've seen sword and sorcery movies where they just put in nudity at various points, I guess, to sell the movie, but the nudity didn't contribute to the tale, and you could tell it was like stuck in, just for the sake of nudity. The Naschy films had nudity, but it was an organic part of the story.
Yeah, and sometimes that will happen. That the director has one vision for a film, and then the producer just says, "Wait a minute, nobody's naked or dying in this. We need some murders of nude people, apparently, kind of like humanoids from the deep."
Yes.
Roger Corman inserted a bunch of naked females getting murdered in it. Because he thought that it needed more sex and violence, essentially. But back then, in that movie that came out in 1980, you and I were young at the time. That did violence and sex did sell. I mean, that did bring a lot of people into the theater, and you typically couldn't see that much of violence or that much nudity on television back in the day. So unless you had HBO, you might be able to see it somewhere between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., as I recall.
Do you remember The Mark of the Devil? That was a movie that came out, I guess, in the 70s. It was rated V for violence, and they gave out barf bags when you went when you went into the theater, and it was pretty graphic, and it was gratuitous. It was like gore and nudity. But I
I
don't think
like I like gratuitous violence, so I don't have a problem.
that's coming out in DVD. I don't recall ever seeing it available. I might not have been looking for it, but the times I did look for it, I couldn't find it.
You know, I have seen that movie. Udo Kier is in.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, he talk about somebody who's great in horror films.
Yes.
He and still with us. You know, thank goodness. Um, but yeah, gosh, I haven't seen that movie forever. Now I've got to watch it, I guess. But anyway, just trying to go back and learn about the history of something, or if you do see something new and you want to you research antiquity and see where this came from, it does spur a lot of interest, and we are carrying the torch for younger generations to come back in and see, hey, look, the movie that you just saw that you thought was really interesting, well, it's actually a remake of this movie that was from 60 years ago and was done better back then.
Well, you've inspired me. I have like champions of Olympus. They were called, now they're the Heraclidae, or the heirs of Hercules, or the tribe of Hercules. We should make a informal order for those of us who are keeping these traditions alive, because we know each other for the most part, and we interact with each other on social media or in other ways, and we help each other too all the time, directly or indirectly. Like I'm thinking about Stephen Smith, like folks like that. And we should make an organization, not a real organization, but like a club of some sort. Because yes, you're absolutely right. We are keeping these traditions alive. We're keeping the flame alive, from the antiquity of the 50s and 60s and 70s. So
well, I mean,
information.
think about it at this point. A lot of people who remember the 1950s are no longer with us, so,
Right.
Unfortunately. And I remember the 70s really well because I was a kid in the 70s, and pretty soon there won't be too many people who remember the 70s. So
Yeah.
we've got to jump in there and represent. We've got to save our. And I was just made a liar, by the way. We do have Mark of the Devil.
So it's available, so I need to look for it now. And let's hope we don't get copyright struck, because
True. Yeah, very true. And this is something we've had for a long time. I haven't been to Amoeba in San Francisco or LA for years, and it still has the price tag from Amoeba on it. So I guess it has been a while since I've seen it. Now I'm going to have to watch it again.
And I'll have to look for it now that I know that it is available on DVD.
Well, the copy I have is made by Blue Underground. And I don't know if Blue Underground's still around or not, but they used to churn out some great cult titles.
I used to have it on VHS, I believe, but my VHS collection was wiped out by the flood for the most part.
Oh, no.
Okay, I have a quest to go on now, which is always very good. And I just looked at the time. Time always passes so quickly when we speak. It's 10:20 already. I don't know how much more time you have.
Well,
I'm in a rush to get off.
Okay. I'm still sort of awake, so
I always add like half an hour for the recording time to when we talk, because we talk before the show, we talk after the show, so this way it can keep the channel open.
Well, going back to what we were talking about, being the torchbearers for antiquity, things from the past. One of the other hobbies that I have is I'm big into antique or vintage automobiles. Don't own one currently, but may again in the very near future. Right now, we do have old cars, but we bought the new. But a lot of old car hobbyists see themselves as they're just more or less holding on to this vehicle for and taking care of this vehicle for the next owner. You know what I mean? And it's kind of a way for us to look at it too, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, that makes a lot of.
I don't have a problem with it.
I'm gonna start putting that together, and by tomorrow I'll have some paragraphs, and I will send it to you, and I will send it to other Sword and Sandal Cinema folks who are each doing their own thing to keep these traditions alive, and I'll send one to Stephen Smith, and we'll take it from there. And by the end of tomorrow, we might have it become an actuality.
Well, that sounds great. Awesome.
Greg, are you one of these people?
Am I one of these people? What?
Well, actually, he has now enormous collection of promo model cars that used to be sold in car dealerships in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, primarily.
I remember that. Yeah.
He's got a massive collection. It's so big that we've run out of display space years ago, and our anniversary is actually Sunday. And well, thank you. And in order to celebrate, we are going to Toledo. We're going to Toledo, where one of the best places to buy those things is located. So
awesome. Congratulations, Greg. Enjoy.
Yeah, so I get to drive 4 hours to Toledo so he can look at promo model cars and then walk out with an armful full of but it's fun, and life's short, so why not go out and enjoy yourself?
Very, very true. Life is very short. And
those things bring me joy. So
that's right.
And it's important. So
I remember when I was a kid, there was something called SRA. I don't know if you had SRAs. They were like when you went to grammar school, and there was an SRA assignment that I think totally changed my life. It was about a young girl, and she was an old woman, and she died, and she had the opportunity to relive the happiest day of her life. So she picked a day when she was with her mother and her grandmother in the kitchen or something, and they were baking cookies. So that was her happiest day that she could remember, and she went back and experienced this happy day. And when she was there, she realized that it was her happiest day, but it wasn't everybody's happiest day. And that even though she appreciated being there and re-experiencing this, her grandmother and mother were so wrapped up in whatever they were thinking about that they didn't actually enjoy her most enjoyable moment of her whole life. And that haunted me throughout life. So I try to enjoy my moments. And I know that, again, after a while, it doesn't really matter so much if other people are experiencing the same joy that you experience, as long as you find that joy and you indulge it, because again, life is short. I turned around, I'm in my 60s already, and wonder what happened to all those years. And so I try to get as much joy as I can. So good for you.
So go forth and spend money. There you go.
I'm real good at that.
Yes. We walked the first time we went to it's an antique mall in the southern part of Toledo. The first time we went in there, and we went in there on the lark too. We were like, I don't know if this is gonna be anything. And the store is huge too. It's just enormous. And one of their vendors has everything that he's ever wanted. So he walked out of there with $1,000 worth of stuff.
Wow!
And this was the first day of vacation, too. We were en route, to somewhere. I think we were going to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or something like that. So we had just stopped there to have lunch and look at this antique mall. And then like 2 hours later, come back, lugging all this stuff out. Well, fortunately, I've gotten wise, and now we take the car with the least amount of luggage space. So if he buys something, it's got to be about this.
But still, as long as it brings joy, that's the important part.
Very true. Very true. And on Sunday, we're taking our biggest car. So that'll be, that's for you.
I remember that trip though you were talking about. We did that, and then on the way back,
we stopped again. I forgot about that. Yeah, we stopped on the way back.
I remember I was
Like
like
2 weeks.
way. Are they open on Sunday?
Yeah, 2 weeks later, we made a return trip.
Awesome.
My happiest day.
Yeah, but maybe not mine. So.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania, we have places too. We drive, and they were like shrines to me, and I'd wind up leaving with tons and tons and tons of stuff.
Sometimes you find your outlet. You find your source. Last Saturday was National Record Store Day, and I don't collect a lot of records, but if I find a title that really interests me or something really off the wall or oddball, I'll pick it up. And we went into a record store. It was really small, very neat, a record store in Oakland, Maryland. And I walked out with the Cheech and Chong album. So,
oh, awesome! I haven't thought about them in years.
Yeah, well,
by the way, she's been keeping company.
Now, what's her name again?
This is Sophia.
Sophia. Okay, I have seen you on Facebook, Sophia.
Yes.
And one of my ill-behaved cats is currently just now walking around.
There we go.
Yeah, this is Tippy, named after Tippi Hedren, for a particular reason. We did not seek Tippy out; she sought us out instead, and she was probably 4 or 5 months old. She was still a baby, and I just happened to look out the living room window, as I have we have bird feeders, so that it's kind of cat television. They sit at the picture window in the living room, and then they can watch the birds, flying and feed.
Mm-hmm.
She was sitting underneath the bird feeder, and when they're homeless, they look a little lost, So I went outside. I took her some water. I took her some food. She ate. She drank. Super friendly too. So she'd had a home
awesome.
Before. But when we brought her into the garage eventually and got her, some medical attention, test shots, all that stuff. I wanted to, the deal was that I was going to pay for all of this, and then hopefully my vet would find somebody to give her a home, and after a week, I was like, she's our cat now, so we got to give her a name. And since the birds were, flying in and swooping down at her, we decided to name her Tippy. Well, it's a good name for her too. She's fearless.
She's a beautiful cat,
and strong-willed. Will let nothing intimidate her. I mean, she's tough. One of my other cats thinks he's an older cat who we got from the backyard. Tippy came out of the front yard. Barney came out of the backyard. But Barney thinks he's top cat, and Tippy every once in a while lets him know that I am. So, she's tough, let me tell you. All 3 cats that I have all think that they're alpha. So occasionally you get some
clash of wills.
Yeah, but Barney is really a big coward, but he puts on this, I'm brave, and he's cocky, and then like 2 minutes into a battle, he runs away from her because he just can't handle it.
Sophia, we went to the Ramapo animal shelter. So she ran under my armpit, and when I sat down, they brought her out. She ran under my armpit, and then she proceeded to throw up on me. So that was how we.
Love at first sight. Huh?
Yeah. I wasn't sure initially, and So they had a policy that, you know, you can keep the dog for a while and then you could return the dog. So, you know, I took that option. But by the next day, I was sure that I'm not returning this dog. You know, she's very different and very loving, very peculiar. She's a very peculiar puppy. Well, she's not a puppy anymore, but I'm peculiar too, so works out pretty well.
I mean, two of our three pets right now picked us. You know, we didn't pick them. So both of them showed up at the house. I think they were both dropped on us. There's got to be somebody in town just thinking, no, I don't want this cat anymore. Let's give it to Brian. You know? They just conveniently place it in my front yard. So somewhere I'll see it. You know.
I need to work out in a few minutes and prep for my gig tomorrow. I'm so sorry. I enjoyed our conversation a lot, as I always do. Happy anniversary again. I wish you great success in your hunting expedition in the car, and I can't wait to hear about all the treasures that you find. In closing, how can people contact you and locate the drive-in theater? And then I'm going to close a tribute to Nigel Green.
Well, please stop by Brian's Drive-In Theater at briansdriveintheater.com. That's Brian with an I. You'll find, if you haven't been to the site for a while, you'll find that a lot of the content has been updated and will continue to be updated until I finish the site redesign, which I think you'll like if you haven't been there for a while. I've tried to make it more navigable. I've added more information, more photos, more video. There's just more of everything, so stop by. And if you want to interact with me on social media, the best way to do that is going into Facebook and typing Brian's Drive-In Theater in the search box, and you will find me. I am on Twitter, but I just lurk on Twitter these days. I do not actively post, and haven't for quite some years.
I'm on Twitter, but I never look at Twitter. So
I look at it like several times a day, but from my own involvement, I just Facebook works better for what I do.
For me too as well. And in closing, tonight's episode is dedicated to the memory of Nigel Green. Yes, I know. Unlike most of the actors that portrayed Hercules during the heyday of the sword and sandal era, Nigel Green was not a bodybuilder, nor was he remotely in his prime, and yet he pulled it off. His commanding presence, over-the-top performance, and total immersion into the role made him a convincing son of Zeus in the 1963 motion picture Jason and the Argonauts. His distinctive and unique interpretation of Hercules remains one of my favorites even now, over half a century later. There's a powerful lesson in this, and it speaks to me quite clearly. In my primal vision, I experienced myself as a Hercules that was no longer young, yet I still sounded the horn of summoning and accepted my Olympian mission. In honor of Nigel Green and what he taught me, I will integrate more systems of strength building beyond the physical into our collective mutual journey of building for ourselves a Herculean physique. And I promised it, and thus it is done. And very soon, the keepers of the flame are coming. So stay alert and take care, everybody. Thanks again, Brian. Thanks again, Greg. Have a wonderful evening.
Good night, Hercules.
Good night.
Good night.